Good morning, students. Welcome back to the online classes. I'll just recap what we had yesterday. We started our day yesterday with the chapter A Triumph of Surgery from Footprint book. In that chapter, we saw yesterday how Mrs. Pamphray was pampering its dog Tricky and giving him lots of food. Instead of 3 meals, she used to give him lots of sweet chocolates, because of which it became very bulgy and could not walk. The Dr. Heriot, the narrator, when he saw Tricky, he was having pity on him and asked Mrs. Pamphray to give him some exercises as well as be strict with its food. And he knew that very soon she will be calling him. And within few days, she called Dr. Heriot and he came to her house and took the dog and told her that I will take care of him, and for that I have to hospitalize him in my clinic. So this was the story that we had heard yesterday. Now, continuing ahead of where we had stopped. At the surgery, the household dogs surged round me. Tricky looked down at the noisy pack with dull eyes and, when put down, lay motionless on the carpet. The other dogs, after sniffing round him for a few seconds, decided he was an uninteresting object and ignored him. I made up a bed for him in a warm, loose box next to the one where the other dogs slept. For 2 days, I kept an eye on him, giving him no food but plenty of water. At the end of the second day, he started to show some interest in his surroundings, and on the third, he began to whistle when he heard the dogs in the yard. When I opened the door, Tricky tottered out and was immediately engulfed by Jaw, the grey hound, and his friends. After rolling him over and thoroughly injuring him, the dogs moved off down the garden. Tricky followed them, rolling slightly with his surplus fat. When the narrator brought Tricky to his household, all the dogs came round him. He put the dog quietly, but there was no joy in the eyes of Tricky. He just laid there without any movement on the carpet. The other dogs came towards him, sniffing around him, and later on decided that he is an uninteresting object. So all the other dogs just ignored him and went away to play. The narrator made a bed in a loose box near to the dogs where they were sleeping, but he always kept an eye on him. For 2 days, the dog was given only water and no food, because it was a part of his treatment. So he went on giving water for 2 days without any food, and we know that already very fat, and if we give more food he may not. So it was a part of treatment that Mr. Heriot, Dr. Heriot, gave a lot of water for 2 days, continuously 2 days without any food. On the end of second day, doctor saw that Tricky was showing some interest around the dogs, because Tricky was always in the box. He was not coming out, and whereas the other dogs every day morning they used to come out of their cages and went around, played around, barked, running about. So he could see that So he, after 2 days, he had that interest. Somehow he came out of the out of the box on the third day. Slowly came to those dogs. As soon as the dogs saw him, they all ran towards him, and the greyhound, the bigger dog, Joe, engulfed him, caught him onto the neck, threw him here and there, and all the other dogs came over Tricky and rolled down. And then they all ran to the garden. He also slowly, with his heavy body, started moving towards the garden, following the other dogs. Later that day, I was present at feeding time. I watched while Tristan slopped the food into the bowls. There was the usual headlong rush followed by the sounds of high-speed eating. Every dog knew that if he fell behind the others, he was liable to have some competition for the last part of his meal. When they had finished, Tricky took a walk around the shining bowls, licking casually inside one or two of them. Next day, an extra bowl was put out for him, and I was pleased to see him jostling his way towards it. From then on, his progress was rapid. He had no medicinal treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs, joining in their friendly scrimmages. He discovered the joys of being bowled over, tramped on, and squashed every few minutes. He became an accepted member of the gang, an unlikely silky little object among the shaggy crew, fighting like a tiger for his share at meal times and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. He had never had such a time in his life. Later that day, Mr. Hopkins, he was there when the people were feeding him, especially the Tristan, the man who was looking after the dogs, their food and everything. When Tristan was giving food or putting food in the bowls, Dr. Hawkins were there, present there to see this. He saw that all the dogs came running and started eating, and they knew that if they did not fight with her, they may not get the last part. Slowly, he saw Tricky coming, went to the bowls. The 2-3 bowls were kept there. He went there and started licking in and out. Next day onwards, extra bowl was kept so that he may also have it. Now the progress of Tricky miraculously started querying. Doctor was very happy seeing this treatment. There was no medicine given to Tricky for his treatment, but just food and lots of games so that he may run about with other dogs. Slowly, he started getting his strength, regaining his strength. The food was given only when the time was there, and no extra food was given. So he started mingling with other dogs, playing with them. They all started playing with him, put him down, roll with him, catch him, and all those things. And he slowly started getting up from his places, and then his bed also was transferred to these dogs, and they all sat together, enjoyed together. He was just like a tiger fighting for his strength, and with all other dogs fighting with them, gaining strength by playing with them, so that he can come victoriously from this illness. All the while, Mrs. Pamphray hovered anxiously in the background, ringing a dozen times a day for the latest bulletins. I dodged the questions about whether his cushions were being turned regularly or his correct coat worn according to the weather. But I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convalescing rapidly. The word convalescing seemed to do something to Mrs. Pamphray. She started to bring round fresh eggs, 2 dozen at a time, to build up Tricky's strength. For a happy period, my partners and I had 2 eggs each for breakfast. But when the bottles of wine began to arrive, the real possibilities of the situation began to dawn. It was to enrich Tricky's blood. Lunch became a ceremonial occasion with the 2 glasses of wine before several during the meal. Now, Mrs. Pamphray, she was still worried and want to know what is happening to Tricky. So every day she would call doctor and ask him about the health of Tricky. It was not once or twice, at least 13-14 times she used to call in a day. The doctor always ignorance regarding whether he has changed his cushions, whether he has given him proper coat according to the weather and all those things. But he used to tell that he is very good and he is out of danger. Only thing, he is slowly getting the strength. Now, hearing this, Mrs. Pamphray, thought of something else. So she started sending eggs, dozens of eggs every day, and beside that, wine also. The doctor was very happy seeing this type of meal, and he and his partners in the clinic, they all were happy with the eggs, started having eggs every day during the breakfast, and before lunch they used to have the wine which was sent for Tricky so that his blood get enriched with that. So instead of giving to Tricky, the doctor and his partner started having the egg as well as the wine, and it became a kind of an occasion, kind of a celebration for them for before every lunch. Okay, students, that's all for today. The last part we'll have tomorrow. I've given some word meaning as well as the questions, 4 questions. So please go through the word meanings, write them in your copy and find out the answers of these questions. Tomorrow I'll come back with the last part of the lesson and with all the questions what I have given to you, the answers of all the questions. So stay safe, stay at home. God bless. Thank you.